Welcome to MIDI's Innovation Vault podcast. In this episode of Medtech's Next Wave, Innovators from LSI, we're joined by Guillermo Cohen, Vice President of Liberate Medical. Liberate is advancing pulmonary care with its vent-free respiratory muscle stimulator, which uses non-invasive electrical stimulation to prevent expiratory muscle weakness in patients on mechanical ventilation, aiming to reduce ICU stay and ventilation duration. Currently conducting a pivotal clinical trial, the company has overcome challenges in development, funding, and regulatory pathways, building a strong team and strategic partnerships to move toward FDA clearance. Join us as Guillermo shares how Liberate Medical is transforming pulmonary care.
So welcome to the MIDI Innovation Vault podcast, where we explore transformative innovations in medical technology. I'm your host, Greg Montalbano, COO of MIDI Medical Product Development. In each episode of this series, we speak with leaders who are pioneering advancements in healthcare technology, discussing their journeys, the solutions they're developing, and the impact they're making in our industry. So today, I'm excited to welcome Guillermo Cohen, Vice President of Liberate Medical, and Liberate Medical is advancing the field of pulmonary care with their innovative product, the Vent-Free, which is a respiratory muscle stimulator designed to improve patient outcomes and reduce the need for extended mechanical ventilation. Guillermo, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Greg, for the introduction. Looking forward to chatting with you about my experience so far and sharing that with your listeners.
Looking forward to it as well. So to start things off, Guillermo, could you tell us a bit more about your background and what brought you to Liberate Medical, as well as those listening who are not familiar with Liberate? Also, could you explain how the vent-free device works, specifically how it applies electrical stimulation to the muscles and to be in sync with the patient's breathing and the main benefits of that application?
Sure. Well, first, I'm an electrical engineer by training. I am from Argentina. I started my career as a field service engineer in the dialysis field. And while working for this company in Argentina, I also needed a thesis project. So I decided to come up with what is called a dialyzer reprocessing machine, that I was going to use it for the thesis, but also trying to commercialize it in my country. Which I did. Everything started as a garage project. Then, unfortunately, one of the many economic crises that Argentina faces from time to time hit, and it was very difficult to pursue that idea. However, in what now would be a blog, imagine this is 1998, where there's still dial-up internet and no Facebook or things like that. I put a post in this blog about my machine. A few days later, my inbox is flooded with interest. And one of these messages is from a small company in the US that had the chemical that my machine needed, and they didn't have a machine. So we start talking about this idea, and at one point he says, well, why don't you bring your machine to the US and see how it looks like? So obviously I said yes, but I had no money at all. So I had to take a personal loan, and I used those funds to build the prototype. I come to the US, meet with this guy, supposedly have to meet with this guy. And one night, he's saying, well, I cannot go. I already was here. I took a personal loan, was going to take me 5 years to repay it, and this guy cannot show up to the dialysis clinic.
Oh, wow.
And he says, well, this is a disaster. So I said, well, I leave you the machine here, and I come back. So I went to visit my sister that lived in a city nearby. And then he says, can you come back and see me? Because I'm going to be there at the dialysis clinic, and I want to see you. I said, well, yes, that's fine. So I tried to book my flight to go back, and it was impossible to pay. So I ended up taking a Greyhound overnight meet this guy. So basically, we met. We had a gentleman's agreement to come back 6 months later with a refined version of the machine. Long story short, we form an LLC. Then that LLC gets FDA clearance for the machine. We started worldwide distribution of this system. The company goes through a series of mergers and acquisitions until later in 2016, they closed the capital equipment division. So that's when I joined Liberate Medical as VP of engineering with them.
That is quite an interesting origin story involving travel and yeah, I know, certainly it's not fun when people don't show up for meetings, but I'm glad you had your persistence to keep pushing.
Yes.
So with regards to Liberate Medical, you've taken a unique approach to supporting patients on mechanical ventilation. And what specific challenges or gaps in care led to the development of the vent-free and the respiratory muscle stimulator, and how does it stand out from other technologies within this space?
Yes. So basically all other applications. First, there's nothing cleared in the US to solve this difficult in winning problem. So far, there are some systems that are in different stages of development, but nothing is cleared yet. But all other applications focus on the inspiratory system, mainly in the diaphragm. We target the expiratory system. So basically, there is considerable expiratory muscle atrophy in patients that are receiving invasive mechanical ventilation. And it begins within the first 24 hours of intubation. So there's nothing currently to prevent this in an easy way. Expiratory muscle weakness has physiological and clinical consequences. The physiological consequences are basically reduced cough capacity, which predispose patients to develop pneumonia, for example, or other hospital-acquired infections. It also reduces the inability to inadequately reduce PEEP during ventilation. That helps protect against lung strain. And it's also related to reduced neuromuscular efficacy of the diaphragm. As clinical consequences, the maximum expiratory pressure and peak flow are both independent predictors of failed delay extubation. So we tackle that problem in this unique way. The other difference is that we take a non-invasive approach. So our electrodes are basically pads that are on the abdominal wall muscles. This makes it easier to use, brings less potential device-related complications, and importantly, lower cost, which tends to make it easier to adopt in a larger number of patients, not in those proven to already have shown winning difficulties. And as a general approach, we aim to prevent the condition. That's also the name of our clinical trial, before it happens.
Very good. That's preventative rather than corrective. It makes sense. And certainly, with the electro pads, it's probably a simpler regulatory path forward with regards to your technology. So just talking about reducing time on mechanical ventilation, that's a significant goal in critical care. How has the medical community responded to vent-free so far, and what are the steps has Liberate Medical taken to ensure its integration and adoption in the healthcare setting?
Well, we are in clinical trials now in the US, so we don't have FDA clearance at this point. In the EU, we have CE mark, and we have already conducted 2 pilot studies that have shown significant reduction in ICU length of stay and improvements in mechanical ventilation duration, mortality, and peak and expiratory flow. But we as I said, we are not commercial in the US, and in the EU, we've taken a very controlled launch. We are not going across the market yet, and that's by design. We want to learn from the key accounts that we are installing this product, because also we know that even with a CE mark, the market will need more conclusive data, and that is what we are currently going for.
Okay. So, thinking about the journey and developing a device like the vent-free comes with unique challenges. So maybe you can elaborate more on, walk us through on some of the significant hurdles Liberate Medical has faced in developing and bringing a product to ultimately bring it to the market, whether it's technology, regulatory, or clinical adoption.
Yes, well, going back to our drawing board, we had many of those over the years. We first had three main functional blocks, if we want to put it some way. We needed our electrodes, we needed a breathing signal processing device or algorithm, and on the other hand, we needed the actual electrical stimulator. So we first tried to answer this question: what is the safest and fastest way to conduct pilot studies without compromising on either safety or time to market? So what we decided to do is we found a FDA CE mark NMES device that was already commercially available that had an external triggering port. And together with off-the-shelf electrodes, we focus on developing a device around our core IP, basically processing the breathing signal to accurately and safely trigger stimulation during the exhalation phase. So with this system, off-the-shelf electrodes, commercially available stimulator, and our own proprietary triggering system, we conducted two pilot studies, one in the Netherlands and another one in Australia, on a total of 40 patients. The results we obtained were better than expected, getting more than 2 days reductions in mechanical ventilation durations and 3.5 days in ICU length of stay. With that, we were able to secure funding from angel investors, NSF grants, and the Kentucky State matching grants. So with just a team of 4 engineers, the first thing that we did is we put together an ISO 13485 quality management system. We didn't have a product yet, but the first thing that we decided to do is to have a strong QMS. In parallel to that, we start industrial design. We put together a usability engineering plan, and we start designing our own proprietary stimulator module. We start building our design history file. We go after IEC 60601 certification. With that, we obtain CE mark. In the process, we also get the FDA breakthrough designation. And we also started very early stages pre-sub conversations with the FDA around the right intended use, the regulatory pathway, biological evaluation, human factors, cybersecurity, and clinical evaluation plans. This we did it right from the beginning. Not all at the same time, but very early in the development process. We identify a contract manufacturer for our electrodes. We design our electrodes, transfer that design to them. We identify a device contract manufacturer, and we transfer the design to that CMO as well. So now here we are ready to launch in the EU, and we visit our contract manufacturer in February 2020. In March 2020, COVID closes the world. And here we are, ready to launch with very limited funds. We cannot do much. So we had to pivot. somehow. And with COVID, we seem to have the ideal solution to resolve the ventilator shortage crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided to seek for emergency use authorizations. These were very, very moving times. You see on TV people dying because there's not enough ventilators, and you think we have the solution to help these people, or to that we may help some, not obviously not all of them, but we may help some. And the EUA doesn't arrive. Well, it finally arrived. And then again, another reality check. Hospital systems and users are overwhelmed. They don't have to learn new technology. You cannot access ICUs or hospitals to train people. Everything is very restricted. There's needless to say what we all faced during that time. So we had to pivot again. We found through some partnerships, an investigator-initiated study in spinal cord injury that was going to be done worldwide. So that wanted to use our device. And by then, we moved the assembly of the device in-house. So we put together a manufacturing process following our 13485 SOPs, and we support that study. In the meantime, we decided to apply to a grant from the DoD, and we obtained a substantial amount of funds to support our own pivotal trial. Then, not without efforts, of course, we secured funding from a strategic investor and a VC fund to close our Series B. With that, we conduct human factor studies. We start our pivotal clinical trial that is 200 patients in the US, 270 patients in the US, Australia, and the EU. We are expecting that to be done late in 2025, early in 2026. And we continue the FDA pre-subs in preparation for that FDA submission that we hope to obtain clearance late in 2026 after we submit the clinical trial results.
So that's definitely quite an impressive roadmap you've been through since 2020. And just listening to your thought process, your application, and how you grew, applying the appropriate principles of QMS and the applications and moving all the way through. Certainly, you're doing all the right things and mitigating risk amongst extraordinary circumstances. So certainly applaud you for all of your progress, even in the face of all the challenges you've had. So you had talked about HFE studies and gathering that data. So I'm curious, with regards to feedback from clinicians and patients, being essential in medtech development, how has that input in any HFE studies or any clinicians you've kind of pulled into your world, how has that input of the healthcare providers shaped, the vent freeze design and usage ceremony as you've, introduced it and modified it, understand improvements and incorporated those design change? And were there any key insights that led to refinements within the product usage ceremony itself?
It did. The final, we had a lot of input at the very, very early stages, where we were trying to observe and understand their pain points and what we needed to achieve. But we always have in mind that everybody loved the idea and everybody loved the solution. However, this is something new that we are introducing into a workflow. And it's always when you present the idea, everybody says, yes, we love it. But then when the time comes and you have to start using it and it's something new in your daily work, it may not be that very well adopted. So what we try to do is minimize as much as possible the interaction with the device, obviously making it keeping safety always, patient safety and user safety always in mind, but we try to make it as intuitive and simple as possible as we could. And that came from interviews, from observations, and later we conducted two HFEs. The first one, we thought it was going to be a summative. It ended up being a second formative. And we learned a lot. We did learn a lot on what we thought was okay ended up being not so good, and we had to go back and to the drawing board and adjust several things. And at the end, in the final HFE, was just minor things, tweaks in the user interface that really helped us come up to the point that where we are now, and it started to be validated during the trial as well. Everybody is actually now using it in a clinical setting, and it's shown to be very, very easy and safe to use so far.
Excellent. Yeah, it's certainly analyzing the pre, during, and post-use of any application with a product that's being used with other devices is very important, and sounds like you're very cognizant of fitting in with that workflow, and certainly that's important, because if you're too disruptive in an existing protocol or workflow that end users may have in the medtech field, it becomes a harder adoption path. So that certainly makes sense.
It is. I cannot forget that how, if you remember how I started as an engineer, I was a service engineer. So I cannot forget how cumbersome could be being in front of a machine trying to repair it or to provide a service when something is not perfectly designed. This another anecdote that I have when here I'm repairing this dialysis machine, and it's a valve that I have to repair, and it's very, very, very difficult to access, and it's the valve that takes in the disinfectant. So I'm here working 4 hours trying to take it out, repair it, put it back, doesn't work, just to find out after those 2-3 hours of working that my glove was cut, and that this disinfectant went inside my hand. So now I have a second burn degree in my hands, and I need to travel back to the airport with an hour driving like this because of that chemical affecting my skin. And that was because of a poor design system. I think that experience is invaluable on how to put yourself in the shoes of the other one before you design something is extremely important.
And when we develop products, end users are multiple groups, right? End users could be clinicians, could be patients, but also service, maintenance, assembly are end users as well. So in considering their usage ceremony, and even on the service side, designing a system that is intuitive to service its applications, has safety, is important for those individuals as well, in order to optimize their time, but optimize the end result and make service safe for them as well. So that's it's an important aspect. You talked about collaborations where you find good manufacturers, the electrode supplier, and others, and supporting you. So, in considering collaborations and partnerships often play a key role in a company's growth. Has there been any other partnerships that help Liberate Medical achieve critical milestones or accelerate the development of the vent-free that comes to mind?
Yes, it's I consider that the biggest hurdle that any company, any size can, in my opinion, faces. I call it like a Shakespearean dilemma: to outsource or not outsource. The answer is yes. The challenge, I think, it's just to find that Aristotelian golden mean on a case-by-case basis. You face that trouble in every aspect, in regulatory, engineering development, manufacturing, clinical development, grants writings, even fundraising. but not only related to outsourcing, it's always, the key I think is always trying to find the right balance between different aspects. And sometimes that requires to be completely unbalanced. But going back to your question, yes, we found some good partners, some ones that were not that good. But yes, we do have and still good partnerships with the electrodes, contract manufacturing, regulatory consultants, and human factors consultants as well.
Excellent. So talking about, excuse me, securing funding. So that it's a crucial part of medtech innovation, especially for a startup. It sometimes appears like a never-ending journey with regards to those activities. And could you share some of Liberate Medical's experience when fundraising, any specific challenges? Obviously, COVID is quite a challenge at that time, but any other specific challenges or insights that you've encountered throughout your journey that you can share with our audience?
Well, we more or less played it by the book. We got a Series A to seed or Series A's funding to complete the pilot studies, 6C mark, 134085 certification, EUA, breakthrough, everything that I mentioned, from basically angel funds, non-dilutive grants from the Kentucky State and the NSF. Those were incredibly important. Bridge rounds, again, from existing investors. But, there's not one answer. You attend to conferences, webinars that help you define your valuation, size of the round, who and how to pitch. But even though there are general rules, your case is unique. You never know how many slides should your deck have. Do you use both statements or not? Do you do a deep dive into the science or into the market opportunity? You do both. You do a blend of these things. You talk to 10 people, and you're likely to get 20 different answers to this. And then you hear the usual responses. Your round is too small, too big. You don't have enough data. You're not at the right stage for us. The answer that I like the most is, after having CE mark, an FDA breakthrough, an EUA, and paired with amazing pilot studies, we hear this, it's impressive how much you've done with such few resources, but your team is too small.
They see that as a risk.
Yes.
Rather than an asset of optimizing.
An asset, yes, exactly. So if anything, I can summarize that: don't give up, believe in yourself, but don't run away from changing or fine-tuning the way you deliver the message, depending on the audience. And then go back to the drawing board frequently and simply keep trying. Now, without formalizing it, we are engineers. So without formalizing the process, we designed an approach, requirements. We put together the strategy. We test it. We review the results, we refine, and we try again. It's not easy. We were too many times on the verge of being unfunded. We were unfunded for a few weeks at one point, but let's just keep trying. As everybody says, there's always one that will come through, and in our case, it happened.
Persistence, you have to have courage and persistence, and that's key, because as you push forward, there's always opportunities out there. You're going to get a lot more no's and head shakes rather than yeses. So that's certainly
definitely more no's than yeses.
So as you continue to grow, what are some of the new challenges you currently are looking to address, and any anticipated obstacles you're preparing for as you expand your future impact in the healthcare field?
Well, we are conducting our pivotal clinical trial. It's, as mentioned before, around 270 patients in 3 different continents. But this is an ICU study. And ICU studies, all clinical trials, doesn't matter who you talk to, it's difficult. And patient enrollment is extremely hard to predict. But ICU studies are a bit more difficult than others. So the main challenge today is how to accurately predict when we are going to finish. We are doing great so far, but things can vary. It's very seasonal. You have the winter that could impact in a positive way, but then you have the holidays that could delay. You have limited resources in some places. So that is the main challenge and focus where we are today, trying to make sure that they are supporting that study as much as we can, supporting the sites as much as we can, to be able to finish this study on time. That is on the clinical side, and then on the engineering side, we are finalizing our technical package for the de novo submission. As you also know, there's recent developments in cybersecurity, so we need to adapt to that. So there's quite a few things that we are working in parallel towards the next goal, that is FDA submission.
Excellent. And finally, as a leader in MedTech, what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs or innovators looking to make an impact in healthcare technology?
I would say the first thing, develop a strong team. Mm-hmm. Your team is key. That goes together with funding, but try to develop a very, very, very strong team. Develop as much in-house knowledge as you can. And if you have to outsource it, make sure that you can transfer in that knowledge as much as possible. Of course, in our case, we are not going to become electrodes manufacturer. Okay, so we are not aiming to do that. But there are other things that we can outsource, but bringing that knowledge as much as you can. But most importantly, build a strong team. Yeah. That's key. And I think I have then, lessons learned. There's a saying from an Argentinian boxer. He used to fight against Muhammad Ali. And he said, experience is a comb that life gives you when you have become bald. So just go with the journey.
That's good. It's good advice, because in the end, any development team is the people, right? It all begins and ends with the team. And that's excellent advice. So Guillermo, thank you for sharing your journey and your insights with MIDI's audience. And I've enjoyed learning about Liberate Medical and the work you're doing to improve the outcomes for patients with pulmonary conditions. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure being here.
All right. So that brings us to the close of this episode of MIDI Innovation Vault podcast. A big thank you to Guillermo Cohen for sharing Liberate Medical's story and his vision for the future of respiratory care. And we hope this conversation has offered valuable perspectives on the advancements and challenges in MedTech. Be sure to stay tuned for more discussions with leaders in healthcare and innovation. And don't forget to follow MIDI on social media. Guillermo, again, thank you again for being with us today.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of MIDI's Innovation Vault podcast, where we explored the revolutionary work of Liberate Medical and their groundbreaking vent-free respiratory muscle stimulator. Remember to subscribe to the MIDI Innovation Vault and stay tuned for more episodes of Medtech's Next Wave, Innovators from LSI, where we continue to bring you the latest innovations and thought leaders from across the medical technology industry. Until next time, keep innovating and pushing the boundaries of what's possible in healthcare.